Humans are inherently social animals, naturally a social individual but not by chance either unnoticeable or more than a child people. Society is something in itself. Nature comes before the individual. Among those books about people and society, The Social Animal by Elliot Aronson and Joshua stands out as a detailed map lead us into the maze of action, prejudice, influence and love. This not a dry textbook con, which is a work written in intimate, sharp voice combined with science experiments and stories real life, from classic experiments on compliance, self-justification to issues hot topics like violence, prejudice, communication, reinforcement. The work poses one question throughout: why do people, although intelligent and creative, they are easily led astray? Lead to the point where one can do just that, absurd and cruel. If human is social animals, so what makes us different from an ant colony or a bee colony? Why same situation? Some people fall victim to prejudice, some people become the instigators of violence. Force, while there are also individuals rise up to defend justice. And the most importantly, in a world filled with influence, can we really be free? In your thoughts and actions? We encourage listeners to purchase and read to fully appreciate the content. Use the book, because only when you read it all this book will help you understand the issues. You are listening to me by the book and support the author. Now let's get started. Let me summarize this book. Chapter 1. What is social psychology? Aristotle once was the first person to call humans a living being, social object. He was right. But the question, what does that really mean? Much other species also live in communal living. Ants. From bees to apes. So what? What makes people special and what makes them special? What makes the field of biology interesting? This thing. Social psychology becomes a unique science. I have dedicated my life to work of a social psychologist, even before knowing this field exists. When Still was a Jewish boy growing up in 1940s in a working-class town poor in Massachusetts, I was curious early, wonder why Catholic kids mocked me with anti-Semitic words, tie, sometimes even beating. Child, my brother Josu was also a suicide bomber when he was young. Ask why some children are successful in the classroom, some others were squeezed. Choked by competition and discipline strict, those painful experiences urged both my father and I to go find solutions in this industry. A field help us have a scientific view of life, human society, and more importantly, find out how to improve it. There are many definitions of social psychology, but before giving the definition that I give is most suitable, let's look at a few examples. Example: a college student named Sam and some friends watching a female candidate Senate election speech television. Sam felt impressed, believing that she is more sincere than her opponent Nam. But after the speech, a friend in the group said she was a hypocrite right away. Others agreed. Sam started to panic and finally muttered, I said, she must not be as sincere as I think. I think a 10-year-old girl every morning also eat wise. Just because of seeing the moving image Messed swimmer on cereal box. Miss believes that his sporting success is linked to associated with eating that cereal. One Montana shop owner never met in his life any Muslims, but know for sure they disloyal, un-American and possibly even terrorism. A high school student named Charlie just transferred to the new city. You were previously love, but not here. Umbrella: new friends are polite, they are not friendly. Clown: Charlie feels lonely, insecure, self-conscious during lunch time. He's sitting with two girls, one smart, open, attractive. The person Charlie was long dreamed, the other one is normal. But instead of talking to her dream girl, Charlie chooses the game again, talk to the other person as a way of self-control, protection against the possibility of rejection. Day December 4, 2016, Egoet 28 years old from North Carolina brings guns to a home-famous pizza shop in Washington, D.C. and 3 shots, no one injured. West: he said he read the rumor online. This bar holds trafficked children sexually and want to investigate. Even if not found anything, he still believes in conspiracy theory. Conspiracy spread during election season. A baby A girl named Gia in second grade wrote that my favorite subject is math. 1 year later, when asked which subject he hated most, I wrote math in just 1 year. From 1 the students were full of excitement, transformed become math-phobic. April 20, 1999, gunfire rang out at High School Columban. 2 students carrying weapons and explosives, killing a teacher with many classmates before committing suicide. After that, a series of other school shootings continue make the unthinkable happen. Realistic phenomenon haunting American society. Steve college senior who is a driver. Be careful, but when you have friends sitting with you car, you become reckless instead of braking when the light is yellow. He often speeds up to overcome. In 1939, Osteiter, a business German joined the Nazi Party, profited from Jewish forced labor, but then he changed, using his factory himself to save the lives of more than 1,000 people. Sentence: the story told in Sin List makes me. My brother broke the rule after watching the movie and gave me everything. The remaining money in the bag for one-person beggar MLA. The 33-year-old American man once dreaming of becoming a rapper suddenly joined ISIS and died in the Middle East. He was friends remembered as a kind and cheerful person. Thousands of other Western youth also left family to become warriors. Holy War. When I was in elementary school, I have a black friend named George Woods. George often feels inferior. Poor because of social prejudices from the movie image to television. The grandchildren's generation. Josh has a different world today, where black people can be actors, politicians, even the US president. But that doesn't mean prejudice has disappeared. Go shopping as a black person. Black, driving while black or going being black is still an experience, painful and sometimes costly experience. Life itself. These examples have points shared. All reflect the power of social influence. The definition I give: go out. Social psychology is the science study the effects of presence, people's imagination or understanding different thoughts and feelings. Our beliefs and behaviors as well as we influence back. Surname. Let's go back to the previous examples. Idea: friends' opinions influenced Sam in evaluating candidates. Image: the photo of the Olympic athlete made the little girl eat WTAS. Montana shop owner steams prejudice against Muslims from the mouth. Social school: Steve drove recklessly. Better with friends. Favorite turned to fear of math because of learning environment. Practice. Charlie chose to talk to someone less attractive due to fear of rejection. The school massacre or those joining ISIS all comes from the same sources. Pressure and social manipulation. And also these influences can cause children to people who do extraordinary humanitarian things like Stindler or the student who gave all the money for beggars in the process of reasoning. Solution: a common mistake is that we often label abnormal behavior by way of attributing to individual nature. Call it personal attribution. The worker evil is evil, madness is evil, crazy. Good people are good by nature. This way of thinking is comforting. I believe that they are different from us and we will never act like that, but reality is much more complicated. Here I am put forward Aronson's first law. Crazy people are not necessarily crazy. Crazy design. Many social situations. Association can make a large number of people normally act in an unusual way often. Think of W, the gunman. Into the pizza shop. If only he alone believe in conspiracy theories, we can say we are paranoid, but thousands of people also believe. Send threatening letters and harass the restaurant. Eat. That phenomenon cannot be attributed solely to an individual's character. It is a product of social context. Likewise, Carpet. John Stone's 1978 play When 613 Parents Killed Their Children. Jim Jones's order shows that the circumstances can bend human reason to such an extent. If just one parent kills their child, it can be assumed that the person is sick. But when hundreds of parents do it together, we are forced to look at the power of social situations and control of a fanatic leader. In many cases, we are too easy. It is easy to judge wrongdoing as a result of bad character instead of considering pressure situation. This simplification leads to complacency, making us believe that we are immune, exposed to temptations or pressures that others stumble upon. But research social psychology shows that no one is perfect. Full immunity. Another concept common is retrospective bias. Coined tendency to overestimate predictive ability of oneself after the incident has occurred when know the result. We often think that too much clearly without knowing it before. Ask for a favor so people like to be experts later. Match. But in reality many things are not as expected. As obvious but only clear after we have data. Here's why rigorous experiments are needed instead. Because it relies on intuition. Social psychology different from residual psychology. That everyone has daily practice. We all observe, predict, and infer behavior other people. But life experiments usually it lacks systematicity and is easily corrupted, influenced by personal prejudices and experiences. Social psychologists, on the contrary, can create variable control situations and draw more accurate conclusions. Importantly, studies show that social influence is not only strong but still extremely sophisticated. Sometimes just the presence, the silence of others can also change our behavior. Sometimes silence is more powerful than direct speech. Next. And sometimes it's the situations themselves. The most normal can push the child. People go to extremes to understand human. Can't just look at the fish. Single factor, have to put them into the networks, pressure, and social context surrounding it. Is these invisible forces decide what we think, believe, and do. When considering human behavior, the fault for personal nature can make us miss opportunities to improve circumstances. A manager is concerned about employees stealing. Then hastily assumed that it was necessary to recruit people with character. Better way, instead of wondering whether the stressful, unfair working environment that makes them act wrongly. Schools fear school violence. Want to do psychological testing to find out what the unstable person who does not look at the pressure itself and the social isolation that students face suffer. This narrow view is just ineffective and dangerous because it makes us confident that we are different surely and will never fall. Of course, I do not deny that mental illness or real personality traits, but social situations are often more powerful than we are. Imagine, therefore, one of the great contributions of psychology. Social studies helps us see the big picture. Circumstances instead of just looking at them. Individual human being. Remember the case. Johnston before emigrating. Those people in Jim Jones's sect are ordinary people. Neighbor, friends, parents. None of them were considered crazy. But in an extreme situation, under collective pressure, they did the impossible. Imagine poisoning her child and committing suicide. This is not a story about a few guys. Madness is a reminder that social situations can transform behavior. Behavior of the majority. When we understand this, we realize a paradox. What we consider to be real personal choice matter is often shaped by immaterial forces. Images around us. We think we are independent but actually dependent on people's looks, attitudes, and behaviors. We believe we see the truth but often only see the world through the prism. Stereotypes, prejudices, and social needs. At the end, I want to emphasize strongly that social psychology is not intended to excuse for wrongdoings, to explain and understand. When you understand me, you will subject to change. Only when realizing the power, only through the power of social influence can we the ability to design more equitable environments, more humane, where people are less pushed into cruel or self-destructive choices. Crazy people are not necessarily crazy. Crazy design. It is a reminder for us less arrogant, less complacent by below certain conditions, ourselves. People who think they are normal are also can act beyond imagination. Understanding that not only helps us to explain society but also more modest in the way look at yourself, and that is the beginning of this book. A Journey Study of Humans as Living Beings. Social Object. Chapter 2. Social Awareness. Medieval times. It is not an uncommon sight in Europe. Passers-by were splashed with a basin of waste down the head. The city people used at that time basins to collect urine feces and then conveniently threw it straight out the window. Accumulated waste on the street causes epidemic until someone moves away, sometimes used as fertilizer. For we today, this system is so crude meditation, especially knowing that the foundations previous civilizations such as Greece, Rome, and Mayan there used to be a sewage system and toilets. Born at home, why Europeans give up comfort to return to the basin feces? The answer lies in false beliefs. Wrong. Many people at that time believed that nudity body is sin. Regular bathing will makes the body susceptible to demonic invasion and diseases originate from evil spirits harmful, not from germs. So, they limit bathing, instead just washing face and hands. This leads to a society where everyone reeks of stench, farmers, monks to kings. And at the same time piping system maintenance skills, water is forgotten, and then people consider it dumping waste on the street is normal. Often. I tell this story to emphasize strong. Every generation believes in things which later generations consider stupid. Doctors, Victorian scholars once laughed at fear bathing, but they themselves believe that women who read novels will get sick and disabled. Born. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, wise man. But in fact, we still easily cling to beliefs. Believe nonsense and pay for it, refuse from climate change to fear of vaccines, to beliefs and conspiracy theories. We are repeating the logic of medieval people using basin stool. From here we enter the realm of perception. Social consciousness, the study of how people forming beliefs, remembering, explaining, predict, make decisions about the social world, and the question is why these advances. This process often leads to errors. Wrong. Humans pride themselves on being the only species. We are actually savers awareness. We always find ways to save money. Mental effort, shorten thinking by shortcut, and that leads to bias. Jeremy Bentham once believed that people make decisions by calculating happiness math, weighing pros and cons, choose the option that brings many benefits. But in real life, few people have enough information and time to do the calculation. That we have limited, squeezed data. Distorted by advertising, little experience, and have to worry about dozens of decisions at the same time. Therefore, we choose a temporary solution. Good based on intuition or short rules. Compact it is that efficiency that is the source of systematic error. The human brain still exists. Operate according to the technological metaphors of each era. Plato's conception of the mind like a charioteer, pulled by a horse, a rational horse and a lustful horse. Telegraph time. The brain is like a system current wiring. It is likened to processor with limited capacity or error operating system, but every metaphor has its limit. The brain does more than simply store data. Whether it still feels, worries, loves, jealous, things that machines don't have. An old metaphor is that we build out the plate John Locke's whiteboard. He thinks that we are born empty, completely shaped by experience. Tenet 20th century behavior was even more extreme than John was. Claims to be able to transform any child, which child becomes a doctor, lawyer, beggar, or thief just by normal punishment. But modern research shows the nature humans are not completely malleable. Young identical twins, even though separated, still exist. Many similarities from habit to political views. New baby 3-month has primitive moral intuition, know how to choose good dolls instead of bad ones. Calculated in such experiments. Mind like the available sketch for business. Color test, not paper white. An evolutionary perspective clarifies this. The human brain is programmed to survive in small hunting groups. Pick Robin Junba discovered the size neocortex is proportional to group size. Human society, the optimal number is approximately 150 stable relationships, also known as number run. Exceed this level. Fragile group. That explains why even though there are goods thousands of friends online, how many people are there? Deep interaction is still limited. Live by benefit groups, sharing food, protect each other, but it also requires energy. Forced to monitor who is trustworthy, who can react multiple. The human brain is thus designed to get along in the group, and to be alert and compete with outgroups. This is easy roots of tribalism. We connect and collaborate with us but easily prejudice, hostility towards them. This tendency helped our ancestors survive. But also sow the seeds of division and violence. Force, war in the modern world grand. Within that evolutionary structure, the brain develops cognitive biases. Consciousness, congenital abnormalities that help to save energy saving but leads to illusion. Imagine one of them is spot on bias. We always believe that we are more objective. Others when observing your behavior close. We know the situation well and can easily reason. Household but when we look at others, we lack context, so easy to label, hypocritical, stupid, lazy. This trap makes us strict with people but generous with yourself. Along with that is neverlist, naive realism verse. We believe that the way we see things is reality. Who disagrees for sure is ignorant. Selfish or evil, absolute faith that I was right raised nurtured countless historical tragedies. From conflict politics to racial hatred. In number of the strongest biases confirm that the center we are looking for. Take note, remembering and believing information reinforces beliefs. Information available while ignoring conflicting data contradiction. The experiment of Mark Snyder and William Swen makes this clear. Born the officer was told that he would meet someone. Extroverts ask questions like you do what to liven up the party. The statue is seen as extroverted. Opposite when told to meet an introvert. Surname again ask you what difficulties you find in the place crowded, and of course the correct answer is accept the initial assumption. In this way, the same person can be transformed introvert or extrovert only through the biased lens. In addition, people also biased. We always put ourselves in center of the universe. This is why when studying in groups, we remember our work better. Contributions from friends or when there is a defect point. We believe the whole world is watching. Thomas Zylop X's experiment proves this. Students wearing shirts with Marie's image on them Manello then walked into the crowded room. Then they thought that half of the people pay attention to the shirt, but in reality only 20% recognize this as the spotlight effect. Virtual thought everyone's eyes were always on him. I, on the other hand, also have the illusion that I am invisible to others. Experiment other shows people waiting together. Strangers believe they are observing one side has more than the other side observes me. This is the invisible cloak. Faith mistakenly think we know others more than they pay attention to us. Heavenly view. The period also led to a famous phenomenon, ban effect, when receiving the descriptions. Vague description, the kind you are sometimes reserved and social but also decisive at times. Most everyone said the same thing already. This is the reason why astrology and fortune-telling math or pop-sick quizzes available looks accurate. It's just a description. General, applicable to anyone, but because we always focus on ourselves, we found it especially true for myself. The brain also has a characteristic. Other dangers, negative bias. Child people who react strongly to threats more than a reward. We found the mold angry faces in the crowd faster. Happy face criticism from the boss haunts. Bad news travels faster than praise, more than good news. Evolutionarily, this reasonable. Being alert to danger helps surviving ancestors. As a result, we fall into loss avoidance. The pain of losing $50 is strong more than $50 fun. In an experiment experience, homeowners are advised on how to save electricity by insulating. When say you will save X dollars a year, at least followers, but when I heard you were lost hundreds of dollars each year due to lack of insulation, double the approval rate. Always lose has more psychological weight to achieve. However, evil is stronger than good means we are helpless. We can be proactive. Counter this trend by creating habit of looking for positive things. Cultivate gratitude and practice act kindly in that way. We weigh equal to the pessimistic tendency of the brain default. For us, another way to understanding how we think is about dividing the process. Perception into two systems. System: the first is fast, direct automatic processing. Sense, little effort. Happening in parallel, it helps us recognize familiar faces, avoid the car rushed forward, reading the words without needing to try. Most everyday behavior ours comes from this system. The second system is slow control processing, requiring intention. Consciousness, occurring sequentially. We use it when learning foreign languages, solving complex math problems, consider political options. This can correct errors in the automatic system. But the price is energy consumption, easy tiring and difficult to maintain long term. Much people believe they can just text, listening to lectures and surfing social networks at the same time, but that's just the illusion of multitasking. Real brain cells cannot process two things at the same time, tasks requiring control. It just switch back and forth very quickly, and the price is both tasks are inefficient. Research shows that people who identify themselves as multiracial good people are often less focused than others. People who don't try to multitask. 2. This system rarely operates separately. Completely separate most of the time. Handle automatically guide us. Still processing control only intervene when the situation is new or trouble. This is useful in life. We cannot consider every small action. Little. But at the same time it also makes us easy fall into the bias trap. Because we often get initial intuition instead of considering elaborate. This division also explains why we often have internal conflicts. On one hand I want to eat cake, on the other hand I want to keep fit, on one hand want to save money, on the other others like shopping. That is the result of two systems compete for control of the vehicle. 6. From all the evidence we see clearly humans are not the only creatures. Perfect reason we are cognitive misses, the cognitive economizer. The brain takes shortcuts to save effort and time. It is that laziness that creates a series of problems. Prehistoric prejudice. This is appropriate. Reason, quickly judge danger or safety, helped ancestors survive. But in today's complex world, together those biases are harmful from the start. Social media, fake news to decision, financial mistakes, social psychology help us see this mechanism clearly, understand how the brain works. We can be more modest about objectivity of yourself and be more careful and judge others. Most of all, we can learn how to design environments, books, education to compensate for the natural inherent deviation. When we know that we are vulnerable, confirmation bias, we can be proactive, look for conflicting information when receiving, the power of negative bias. We can practice gratitude and kindness. To fight against. When you realize that you are dominated by loss aversion, we can make smarter financial decisions. Social awareness is not just a chapter book, it is a reminder that every thought, our thoughts, feelings, and decisions are all in our mind. In a web of bias and bias, turn off. And only when we understand do we have a chance. Go beyond your own limits. Chapter 3, Self-Justification. May 20, 2002, a commercial jetliner collided with a cargo plane on German skies, killing 71 people, including 52 children. This tragedy happened caused by a series of errors in the control's air traffic controller. When investigated, those involved do not admit that they made a mistake. Instead, they give a series of reasons to mitigate responsibility. They do not lie, but also not looking straight at the truth. In these situations, we see clearly the power of self-justification, the mechanism by which people use to protect positive images. Extreme about myself. I myself used to be witness of a special phenomenon. A man was sentenced to death for murder. While the following evidence that shows he may be innocent. Those judge and prosecutor in the case, instead of admitting mistakes, try harder, find every way to keep the original verdict, citing weak evidence or secondary arguments to justify his decision. Once a man has invested his honor and belief in a verdict, the turning on the contrary, it is extremely difficult. Discord awareness causes them pain. And the easiest way to ease the pain is to hold on to faith. This mechanism does not only take place in court. In every corner of life daily we lie to avoid trouble. Confused, then tell yourself everyone lies. Small cheating in exams, then legalized by thinking it's no big deal. Everyone does. We buy an item expensive and then convince yourself it's real necessity. In that way, we soothe gap between behavior and belief. The basis of this phenomenon was laid by Leon Versteiger describes in the theory of inequality cognitive harmony. When we have two perceptions contradiction, for example I am honest and I just lied, we fell into a state stressful and difficult to deal with. We have three ways to change behavior: change beliefs, believe or add a new perception to justify. Often changes behavior the most difficult because it requires courage and determination. Change. So most people choose the child. Justification, a proof. A typical example is the experiment of Festinger and K. Smith 1959. Students are required to do the following tasks, extremely boring tasks like spinning wooden stakes within 1 hour. Then they were asked to convince another student that that mission was interesting. Some are paid $20, others only $1. Result: the group that received $20 confessed that the mission paled tea. The group that received $1 did it themselves. Convince yourself that the job is real fun. Why? Because $1 is not enough to justify the lie. To reduce discord. They were forced to change their beliefs. That job isn't so bad. This is one of the strong evidences. Strongly shows that beliefs can be bent to legalize behavior. Another mechanism is justified by effort. People tend to appreciate more what they are hard-won. A group of students. The pill is divided into three. A family group join the club with simple ritual. A group through the difficult ritual. Group the rest is no ceremony. Then they to listen to the club discussion. Actually very bland. The group experienced difficult ritual to evaluate the session discussion more interesting. They had to endure humiliation to reduce discord. They convinced themselves that this group was real worth it. Mechanism of justification by decision also popular. Every day we give countless options: buy a car, choose a career, get married, wife, choose school. When two options are horizontal each other, we feel insecure because if we leave this, sorry, choose that is not sure. After, when deciding, to reduce discord, we raise value your options highly and lower them, the selected value is omitted. This phenomenon called the spillover effect of choice select. Therefore, a car buyer Honda will find it safe, economical while criticizing Toyota for being boring. Still Toyota buyers argue otherwise again. Every decision is like an arrow pulled according to the restructuring of beliefs to protect option. But self-justification is not just stop at small personal decisions, baby. It also appears in the acts. Ethical and unethical actions. A student cheating on an exam will downplay the importance of loyalty. Real. A soldier in war can convince yourself that killing civilians is done on orders or because bigger goals. Once you have passed small boundaries, people tend to continue to step further. In many studies and other studies, this phenomenon was repeated. A group of students had to write an essay. Defend a view contrary to personal beliefs core. Those who only receive rewards small for this often change attitude degree, gradually accepting the views they originally had. Protest. Those who are paid high know they have an external reason strong enough to justify discomfort. Roof. It is the small bonus that creates the difference. Strongest tie forcing people to change their beliefs. Believe in harmony. Here's why strict societies often maintain high attachment. People have to suffer too much to be accepted, and the truth that suffering makes them tell themselves that the system is legitimate. The same mechanism explains why our initiation rites different. From the army, brotherhood to religious groups unite members so strong pain and humiliation must go through to become proof that this place is worth it. Another form of self-justification is the spread of choice select. When forced to choose between two options, choose equal, we often raise the price value of what you choose and lower the I give up. In one experiment, women asked to choose between two household items equivalent value. After selection, select. They rate their choice higher much, while lowering the remaining item. This phenomenon not only appears in shopping but also in decisions. Important decision as choosing a career or friend's life. Post-decision adjustment. This helps people feel less regretful and more confident in your choices. On one's own justification is also the door to enlightenment. Moral degradation. A student can start by copying a few lines in the test. Cognitive dissonance will appear. I am an honest person who contradicts. I just cheated to reduce it. He can change beliefs. Who does not have space cheat. It's not a big sin. At that time next time cheating will be easier because the behavior was consistent with the new belief. From there, the misconduct gradually increased. Each step. This phenomenon is called as a justification trap. This mechanism is also reasonable. Explain why so many war crimes made by ordinary people often. A soldier can shoot a civilian. Usually because of situational pressure. To reconcile with his image, he thought for sure they are enemies or we just follow command. After each step, the belief is adjusted. Adjust to legitimize behavior. Over time increasingly extreme actions is considered reasonable. The climbing itself. This ladder of justification is the dangerous thing. Dangerous, because it leads people to mistake small to great tragedy done. Need to note the self-justification is not only negative mechanism. This can also be used for replacement. Positive change. A person who is initially free forced participation in volunteer activities. I can tell myself I'm doing it out of duty. But the discord between self-image and behavior gradually leads them to conclusions. I participate because it is the right thing to do. Finally, joy. New information sticks easily, turning them into loyal users. Stick to charity, self-justification. So it is a double-edged sword. It can keep us confident and stable, but also can push us into a spiral of legitimization. Wrong understanding this mechanism is paramount. Important if we want to avoid the trap of little words, compromises shady and decisions that can lead us away from the initial value. Another classic example of a trap justification comes from the Vietnam War. As the U.S. government gets deeper and deeper into soaring casualty numbers and prospects fragile victory, they could have early withdrawal, but to admit that all the blood and bones sacrificed were meaningless is too difficult. So every failure again justified by new escalation. More troops, more bombs, more years. It is because of the fear of admitting mistakes that a decades-long war that caused disaster for both sides. Phenomena. This is also repeated in personal life. A person invests in a business project. Loss can continue to pour money. Because if retreat, he had to face the truth that the initial decision was wrong. Instead of accepting the loss, he clung to hope. Fragile hope, legitimizing perseverance of yours for the reasons that will come other. This is called escalation. Commitment, another form of self-justification in marriage and love. This mechanism also present. An unhappy couple. Happiness can continue to be together because of invest too much time and emotions. They tell themselves that every relationship has its ups and downs. In times of trouble or the other person will change. It is that emotional investment that makes letting go becomes difficult and to justify helping them continue to suffer even when there is no more love. But there is also a positive side. When we have choose to stick with one person or another goals, self-justification can help us overcome difficulties. Soldier of love. Volunteer to join the relief campaign. Umbrella. Hesitant at first will gradually tell yourself that this is the right thing. It is this new belief help him persevere and make many sacrifices then. In that way, self-justification become the driving force that keeps us consistent with positive behavior. An interesting illustration. Otherwise, researchers observed two student group. The first group is encouraged volunteering by material rewards. The second group is only allowed simple request, no reward. Results. When the reward disappears, the group first is less attached to the activity, and the second group, to justify the action initially, convinced himself that I do it because I believe it is a good thing. And it is the second group that becomes the persistent, self-justifying volunteer. So like a flame can illuminate bright, can burn. It helps us maintain a positive self-image, reduce inner tension, but it is also possible lead us down dark paths. One small lies can turn into a chain confusion. One wrong decision can climb ladder to tragedy. If not seen sense, we will be caught in a spiral of integration to actualize the very things we once took for granted. Wrong. The message here is not that remove this mechanism. That is impossible. It's ingrained in the way the brain works. But by understanding, we can control. When you find yourself looking for reasons, make excuses instead of facing the truth, we can stop. When you know that anything cognitive dissonance makes us self-deceptive, we can choose to face it bravely. Humility, diligence and self-reflection are the only weapons to prevent the trap of justification from swallowing up me. Chapter 4. Compliance. There is a scene in a movie that I never forget. A character standing before a crowd, face pale with fear, sweat pouring out, while the whole group was shouting in unison a wrong answer. The man knows the truth, true, but my throat tightened. Final, he opened his mouth and repeated the wrong answer with the majority. No one forced him. No direct threat, just the power of the crowd made him disappear. Serve, it's not just a movie script. Image. It is the phenomenon that Solomon witnessed. Demonstrated in a series of famous experiments by me. He let the participants sit in a pre-arranged group of accomplices. Simple task, compare the lengths of the straight line and choose the correct answer. When both accomplices deliberately chose the answer wrong, nearly 75% of participants also repeated wrong at least once. Though their eyes see the truth clearly, their strength, the silent pressure of collective consensus, has caused people to abandon personal judgment. Core. Why does this happen? In part because of normative influence. People fear being isolation, wanting to be accepted by the majority, stand on the same side, feel separated. Separation becomes so painful that we accept it. Sacrifice truth to keep harmony. The other part is informational influence. When we uncertain, we believe the group has more informed than we are, even when we sure, confidence shaken when seen the whole group is opposite. But power compliance is not just about recognition. Simple formula, Stalin Muram gave it to a much more terrifying level in the series of experiments. Famous experiment at JA. People, normal volunteers are welcome, appointed as a teacher and ordered to cause shock the student every time he answers wrong. In fact, students are actors. SC power is just fake. But teachers don't know that. Under cold command, the search of the researcher in the white PL coat. The majority of participants continued to press the button. Shock up to 450 V, a level they believe can be fatal. They were worried and trembling, sweating, but still continuing. Why? Because they obey legitimate authority. When analysis, Milgram realized that compliance increase or decrease depends on many factors. Factor, distance from victim, presence of a prestigious, opposing ally of the person giving the order, a controversial conclusion. Normal people can do it. Cruel, just because of the situation, have the authority to order. Compliance is not, with the exception of a few evil individuals, is a universal characteristic. The question is compliance all bad? No, definitely. Human society can only function thanks to a certain level of compliance. Are not who wants to live in a world where the law, rules, standards, and manners minimum ignored. Compliance helps we have social order, but the face, on the contrary, it can also lead to tragedy. When the norm or command is wrong left. The studies following AS and Milgram have shows that compliance also affects countless other fields. For example, in the plane crash, investigators often discovered that the co-pilot realized there was problem but dare not argue. Chief, the very structure of power and culture. Compliance has created many opportunities for prevention. Blocked, disaster missed. People research has shown two types of effects. Social norms that lead to conformity. The first is the normative influence. We work in groups to be accepted, to avoid isolation. The second is information influence. When love in ambiguous situations, we rely on others to define reality in the dark. When hearing strange noises, we easily believe in them. The popular explanation rather than believing in personal sense. The interesting thing is that only need an ally, the power of compliance has sharp decrease in experimental variation as. If there is another person in the group give the correct answer, the percentage of participants who dare keep your judgment soaring. The presence of a coin breaker like a life buoy for personal resistance to pressure. This explains why dictatorships always fear and repression of dissenting minorities. Only a different voice is enough to make shake the strength of the entire crowd. Compliance does not just shape behavior daily but also explains the spread of fake news, prejudice and collective violence. When a stereotype is accepted widely, many people repeat it just to conform to standards without a degree proof. For example, in history, when Marlowe and Shakespeare wrote of Jews as greedy, that does not appear from personal experience. They are simple, just following a pre-existing social pattern. Modern experiments also show the random exposure to stereotypes can change an attitude. As participants read court transcript and overheard a comment racist remarks about black defense attorney, they evaluate the lawyer and his client are both lowly. Then the group that heard a negative comment related to race. Just one sentence, a glimpse, is enough to trigger compliance. Prejudiced standards. There are times when standard society is so strong that it divides everything life. Research in the mining town West Virginia coal mine, segregation-era legal race shows underground workers, white and black mines cooperate and look out for each other brotherly. But stepping out onto the ground, they back to two separate communities, obeying conform to social norms on the ground. Same person, two ways of behaving, only because of the two different contexts. The power of compliance is both scary and thoughtful. It can perpetuate prejudice and injustice, but can also explain the change positive. When the South American soldiers in the 1950s enlisted and continued exposure to less segregated military environments, the more racialized, the less successful they become. Black people, new standards can melt old attitudes. An example. Another strong history of compliance is North Tiananmen Square massacre year 1989. Thousands of students and citizens demonstrated peaceful, but when the army was the order to open fire, many soldiers did follow the killing of his own people. They are not evil, they are the young people believe that duty military requires obedience. It is a painful testament to the obedience to authority can lead to wrongful action. How brutal! But also in history, we see cases on the contrary, those who dare not obey defenders, individuals like Rosa Parks, who refused to give up bus seat to black person. The White Montgomery in 1955 created a new standard. Her disobedience was not only break the apartheid order at that time but also sparked the movement, democratic movement. That is why it is necessary to emphasize strongly that compliance itself is not good, not bad. Its value depends on the standards that people are comply. Social psychologists only realize that standards can change rapidly. Rapidly as social conditions change. In one experiment, participants be placed in a situation where one hears a stranger's pick up trash and put it in the bin. When that they tend to follow, keeping the environment cleaner. School. But if a stranger throws indiscriminate senses, they are also likely to throw away their senses. Increase. An individual's behavior can suggestions about social norms and influences to the collective. Another illustration at the stadium when placing a sign, please keep it clean. Most people put their trash in the right place. Trigonometry is significantly reduced. This message exploiting positive normative influence. People want to do what they believe. Most are doing conversely. If the table only focus on people letting go much, the result is counterproductive because it unintentionally legitimizing negative behavior. Research on compliance gives us a picture. Complex picture. People are easily drawn, follow the crowd, and have the ability to change the majority by the behavior of the minority. Brave. Just one ally up voice, the pressure of consensus is reduced significant. Just another mirror differentiation, new standards may form. It is important to understand and adhere to is a normal characteristic of humans, people, not a sign of weakness or stupid. But because it is popular, so it is both a platform for cooperation, is also the land for collective tragedies. Body, our mission is not to eliminate compliance but rather direct it towards those correct standards. We need those a society where people follow rules, fair, humane, and at the same time no doubt when power or the majority goes deviate from reason. At that time, the power giant of compliance will become motivation to protect dignity and life instead for threatening them. Chapter 5. Communication, mass propaganda and persuasion. Every day you are surrounded by people trying to sell you a product, a trip, an idea, convince you that yes, makes you angry about an injustice, scare you of an outside danger out, or seduce you into doing what they do want. Advertising inserted in the middle of what online reader, pop up in the page margin on each bill. Chen before most TV show, station poster, gasoline. Pressure machine, bench between fluctuations of modern life. Nothing has changed. Rapid change in technology and the way we use it. It is for entertainment, communication, interaction. Each other and how others affect us through TV, computer, phone and other mass media. So here I sketch the picture present of mass media and its effect on the recipient. Go into convincing. When a message from a person who changes opinions, attitudes, another person's attitude or behavior, convince a media from a person who changes opinions, attitudes or other people's behavior. But theory, effective recovery thanks to what you know, different messages and how different determine its validity. I look at 5 important dimensions. Rational or emotional should appeal to people's reasoning ability, sounds good and evokes emotions. Personal example, vivid or statistical evidence attached with a strong or built experience, an undeniable statistic. Identity matching. Message has plus enjoy their identity and how they see themselves, yourself. One-sided argument or two-way, just state your opinion, present opposing opinions and then respond, measure difference of opinion. Effective, how does the message relate to gap between initial audience opinion and the audience and the stance the message calls for. Rationally and emotionally, political life give us many stories to remind us. Emotional warning, especially of sadness, fear, often beat the circuit data sheet. Lost in a town where I used to living. Community votes on giving Flua in tap water to prevent tooth decay. The supporters put forward a rational message. Dentists cite evidence of effectiveness, flu results and safety claims. Side protest leaflets with a picture of a monkey, ugly mouse with text. Don't let them leave rat poison in your drinking water, though the referendum failed miserably. Story, this is not a controlled experiment. It does not absolutely prove that the call superior emotions, but along with those other facts, it makes us have to be serious, reconsider intuition that reason always win. Next is the power of personal example. Vivid versus statistical. Majority, we are deeply moved by one sentence, more specifically the whole data dump. There is why my testimonial is down 18 kilograms thanks to this program. Effective. Although small print, results not applicable for everyone. Campaigners, professional corridors are also trained. Practice, don't throw numbers at the congressman. Tell a heart-touching story about a specific people. One picture, one fruit basketball crashed through the living room wall can beat a whole page of charts. One, an equally powerful shortcut is to apply it to yourself. Sharp. If the message hits right, who am I? It makes the listener act as if he is. Keep your own ego a wallet. Excellent example, Texas state campaign to reduce discharge instead of the C. Do not discharge since Texas Department of Transportation creates new password. The effect hits directly at the proud identity, don't have touched Texas. The results of the above, Texas highway traffic decreased by about 72% during the period. 19,860,990. Research also shows that simply changing the sentence, ask the question, is voting important to you? Are not. Sang became an important member. Important to you, voter turnout increased. Ask the child who wants to be a person. Help. More effective than anyone who wants to help. Even warning not to be a cheater, make people cheat less than not cheat. When the action is framed as a part of me, it is sustainable more than a casual affair. Still calling, what about fear when effective, when which is counterproductive? Experiments for seeing moderate fear helps people deal with it. Good right now, but if there is time, thoughts and actions, a message really makes me scared to death promote stronger action, as long as it goes with specific instructions. Optimistic to face vice risk. For example, the injection campaign college boards consist of two things. Case, just give instructions where, when. Let schedule and conditions instructions plus fear. The high fear describes the dire consequences if not injection. The results of the group with fear plus only 28% of the group were vaccinated while the other group only 3% with smoking cessation. Threat of danger. Nicotine increases the intention to quit. But no, with specific removal, the behavior is not change. On the contrary, teach how to do it. Not provoking fear is also ineffective. The most effective is to combine fear and direction. Specific instructions. Months later, this group smoke less but risk the fear to be right. People with low self-esteem are easily overwhelmed by fear. Too scared, they turned off the machine and denied it. Into the blanket to find warmth. In a study, rescue, moviegoers car crash screen version. Large image near, if average weight high, tend to take action more precaution than small screen viewers far away, but people with low self-esteem are the opposite. Again, excessive fear makes them avoid. Right, even people with high self-esteem will behave like people with low self-esteem if oppressed by fear island and feel helpless. So want encourage those who are easily overwhelmed. Guided message design exam, specifically to arouse the feeling of oneself. Last one of this batch. 1 sentence ask strategy should use argument. 1 direction, ignoring opposing views. Or 2 afternoon, remind to argue and then hit back. If the other side is mentioned, the audience can see the speaker is objective and increased reliability, but also risk turn on the light that the issue is controversial. Do listeners are distracted and less persuasive. In reality, there is no single rule. Voltage for all situations. The rest of this content will be explained in turn when and for whom each approach is beneficial. Position. Now comes the question of how to message far or near to the original point of view audience is more effective. Usually if a message too far from belief present, it is easily dismissed. But if it's close enough for the audience to take in but also creates a bit of a challenge, it can make them think and adjust their attitude degree. For example, a strong supporter of gun control is rarely persuaded by message to repeal the Second Amendment, but they may be swayed by the proposal. More rigorous background checks. The moderate displacement is likely to change more sustainable change than an extreme shock. Solemn. Here the modern theory of theory clothing plays an important role. Model probability of expansion. According to this model, have 2 ways to get a message across. Dynamic central road. When people have motivation and analytical ability, they focus on reasoning with evidence. Perhaps change your attitude this way. Durable and unshakable road. Peripheral. When the recipient has little interest or lacking the ability to process, they were convinced by superficial signals such as attractiveness. Speaker. Number of times. Background music. Expression is repeated. Statue. Change through this path quickly but also easily disappear. For example, a reputable doctor explains the side effects of drugs accompanying leaflet with convincing research data through the central road. While one pop star appears in commercial anti-smoking poster, just with pictures can act via peripheral pathways. Both are effective but durability is different. Advertising companies understand this. A campaign can be simultaneous time aimed at both lines. One side is research data to prove the product well, one side is attractive image to record miss. Advertising colors like tall people. Mauro waiter. No need for reasoning, just one seductive, repetitive imagery is enough to build a brand. However, the media is not always persuaded in the desired direction. Sometimes we encounter the phenomenon of the effect boomerang, counterproductive message. If listeners feel attacked, they the more stubbornly hold on to the original belief. Research shows that when conservative audiences watching political ads that are too extreme of the liberals, they not only were not convincing but also become more conservative. The more you try to deny it, the more the old belief is held. Consolidate. This is especially important in the age of social media, the place of communication, information shared in filter bubbles. Users mainly see the views like me should any contrary message, which direction is usually pushed out or increase resistance, so the way framing the message becomes decisive. Determined emphasize similarities instead of direct confrontation can open the door to dialogue. Phone. Besides, we also see those classical propaganda techniques still work. Onion. Minister of Propaganda Hitler exploited three factors thoroughly: repetition, strong emotions, and common enemies. He emphasized the same message every day, 1,000 times, attach it to pictures and music, evoke emotions, and create them at the same time. We against them. This formula has brought a civilized nation to its knees. Genocide. Nowadays, commercial advertising trade applies the same formula. A trade beer brand associated with friendship, comrade, a car company associated with freedom. Adventure, a political campaign associated candidate with family, security. Traditional. Logic is just a shell, the core is symbols and emotions. When by understanding these mechanisms, we not only see the power of persuasion but also understand why people are easily manipulated. So social norms, logical reasoning theory, symbolic image, fear, all both blend to shape beliefs and our daily behavior. Before the power of propaganda, the question is how to resist persuasion. One answer: words from the concept of psychological vaccination, like a vaccine. If we contact before with a weakened version of the argument wrong, we will develop antibodies to fight stronger version later. For example, when students hear arguments weak against vaccination, they learn counterargument and then less persuasion convinced by anti-vaccine argument stronger. This shows contact controlled with misinformation. Pair. When is the best way to protect yourself? Another tactic that the preacher's regular use relies on discord. That awareness is foot in the door technique. If you make someone agree to a request, small request, the more likely they are to agree to the request. Greater demand then increases. Why? Because when they do small actions, they justify themselves. Prove that I am in favor of this, from there it is easier to accept the next step. One classic research shows that when women, the housewife, agreed to put up a small sign driving car safety at the window, they are highly likely more would agree to put up a sign giant in the garden a few weeks later. On the contrary, there is also the door slamming technique. Face, starting with a request that is too big, then withdraw with a request smaller than the person accept because feel like rejected once. Have tend to agree with the following proposal to balance equal. Both techniques exploit the psychological mechanisms of self-justification and the desire to maintain a positive self-image. Also need to mention the phenomenon of scarcity. It is easy to appreciate what is rare. Difficult get add with the text, only 24 left, hour. Limited edition or for only the first 100 people are usually effective not because the product is better but because it inspires arouse fear of missing out. Current media. Modern times, especially the internet and social networks, opened a new era for theory. Serve here the speed of transmission is extremely fast, filter bubbles breed prejudice and fake news can be amplified to the point of causing harm. Political instability. Research shows that fake news often spreads faster than real news because it is sensational and causes strong emotions when users share that unverified, ripple effect turn a rumor into social truth. But the internet also offers opportunities. Community campaigns, calls for blood donation, environmental protection, fundraising, humane, communicable and mobilizing millions of people in just a few days. One short video about hunger or a cry calling for help for disaster victims can making viewers around the world open their wallets by messages that touch emotions and nature. Humanitarian. In conclusion, convincing, not always dangerous. It is work neutral tool, which can be used for manipulation or to arouse goodness, to understand how it operates from normative influence and information, emotion and reason, the central and peripheral lines to the technique. Manipulation techniques and resistance mechanisms are first step to protect ourselves and also to use it responsibly. When look at the world today, where images and the message is constantly surrounded, the more we need to be careful who is talking, what they are saying, tell who and why. We believe awareness clearly, that is the only shield against the enormous power of tradition, information and propaganda. Chapter 6. The violence human fear when I walked out first time to go to college teach. The question that the students threw at me not about love or politics about violence. Why do people fight? Each other, killing, torturing. Is that the original? Natural substance or product of society festival? We are born with aggressive blood. Or learn it through life? That is the question center of this section. First of all, it is necessary to clarify that aggression is defined as an act intentional acts aimed at causing harm to others other. Intention is the dividing line. Determined a drunk driver caused an accident. Kill without intention, no classified as aggressive behavior. But if one person smashed a beer bottle on another person's head to hurt them, that is aggression. And aggression can be physical or psychological. Since ancient times there have existed two extreme views. Solemn Thomas considers humans to be selfish. Aggressive so society needs strong laws to hold back. Jens Rosel believes in people again born good, new civilization corrupt. Simfred went further. He gave that humans carry two selves energy and Thanos always fight like that. 'Cause conflict is inevitable but modern research shows the nature not that simple. That's right, son. Person carrying relevant biological components to aggressive. But culture and economy life experiences shape the way we express violence. Force is not fate but potential triggered or inhibited by circumstances. Animal evidence is rich in meaning. A classic experiment. Cats are raised from childhood with the mouse when grown. Many children cats do not prey on those mice. Although the hunting instinct still exists in the dimension. In contrast, mice were kept in isolation from small, never learned to be aggressive, still no attack territory when another animal invades. Enter that shows some aggression. Innate, partly learned from the environment. School, compare our close relatives. More to clarify, chimpanzees are famous for their group attack, killing the male of the pack other to occupy territory and food. At that time, Bono was also close to human beings. No less, deal with stress by sex and caress, almost none collective violence. Two brother species, two different evolutionary strategies show human nature is also full of possibilities. Energy, aggression, or peace and culture. Context will determine which wins. Position. Cultural factors are evident in the so-called as a culture of honor. In societies where economy associated with livestock farming, where resources vulnerable to robbery, losing the cow means losing everything. Patrimony. People form standards. Must be ready to retaliate fiercely against any insult. Experiment at the University Michigan student, Southern male student was bullied. Strange intentional insult in the hallway, and cortisol and testosterone hormones. Red face and ready to retaliate harder. Northern students. This difference not from moaning but from literary standards. Chemical sociological statistics also support this. The southern and western states of the United States, where culture of honor permeates, has a high rate of murder for personal reasons much higher than the northern states. This also associated with carrying guns. Schools and high levels of domestic violence more than the same country. But the standard different cultures create aggressive behavior different. Gender and marriage are one and the same. Story part men are the majority island in serious violence from murder to armed robbery. One factor that is often mentioned is testosterone. High testosterone levels often accompanied by competitive, aggressive behavior. War, but this relationship is not one way. Aggressive behavior can also be increases testosterone and more importantly, the evidence is mostly correlational, does not mean testosterone directly causing violence. Gender differences still exaggerated or narrowed by culture. Some societies, boys and girls alike encouraged to fight, leading to small distance. In other societies, girls are taught to be obedient, so the difference seems larger. So the world character is the foundation but social norms determines how it manifests. But aggression is not just about fighting and bleeding. It also has more sophisticated forms. It is called relational aggression. Actions intended to cause harm others through defamation, isolation, and gossip. Rumor, discredit children, especially girls often show this form clearly. don't play with it anymore, don't invite him to join. Family. In the modern world, the internet making this type of aggression more widespread. Time out. Cyberbullying, bullying through network, can destroy a young spirit years in silence, leaving no consequences. Less physical violence. Emotional factors. The situation also plays a strong role. Head first, alcohol reduces the ability to distort the way we process social information. Festival. Many people after drinking easy to understand wrong words, consider it an insult. Aggressive reaction. Notably, there are also drink phenomenon. If you believe that I am drinking alcohol, people can should be more aggressive even if what they drink is a soft drink. Expectations can also be trigger. Painful, aversive behavior, hunger, heat, all can cause a flare-up. Violence. Experiments show that we are more irritable and aggressive when we are in a hot room. Criminal statistics in the U.S. also saw hot days, especially heat waves, violent crime increase. Shadow flow also illustrates. When heat increase, probability that the pitcher will try to hit the ball love thrown at the opponent is also high. Then, in the sweltering traffic jam, the honks, anger and rude gestures also broke out. Easier. Social exclusion is another source of aggression. When a person is isolated, established, ignored by friends. Feeling pain. This can lead to aggressive behavior. Research shows that social pain has many similarities with physical pain. Brain matter. A child is eliminated from the game can then immediately select harass, annoy those who have been eliminated. Many school violence cases. Source of abandonment and humiliation. Still, there is something called the weapon effect. Test experiments show that just seeing a gun in the room, participants easily choose the image. Punish more severely when angry, that is, the presence of the symbolic object. Violence is enough to arouse aggression. The Wonk People HP slogan therefore needs to be considered carefully. Because sometimes politics, the presence of guns also increases violent behavior. Force is more likely to occur. In addition, the status anonymity, loss of personality also makes human become more aggressive when we believe that I am difficult to recognize. Personal responsibility. Reduced number, increased potential for harm. Group winter is a typical environment. A person can throw stones, smash things, shout violence when standing in hundreds of people. What they never do when there is only one me. The internet with its anonymity also facilitate this form of aggression. Discontent and relative deprivation also matters. When people see the gap between periods, the hope and reality are too great, they easily get angry. Angry. Not just absolute poverty leading to riots, but it is when a group that believes it deserves more but was rejected. Sometimes hope betrayed is more dangerous. Constant deprivation. The promises failed, expectations were broken. Could spark a wave of violence. Muscle psychological mechanisms also have a special form, separate. A little angry. When the cause of anger too large or vague, people easily find a visible, weak, hateful object. A little angry. Many communities have become victims in this way, immigrants, other religious or ethnic minority groups. And the level of violence against the scapegoat depends on social norms. If the commune association allows, it can easily escalate into a disaster. Dramatic. If society prevents it, it is restrained. Again. An increasingly important source of influence. Attention is violent media, from movies, television to games. Play video games. Research shows that exposure to violence can increase aggressive thoughts, hostile emotions and actions. Violence in the experiment. Children watched the movie has a scene where the character is rewarded when hit another person immediately after playing. They also create actions. More aggressive video games are even more clear. Clearly when the player has to shoot, kill to win, especially when that action is applause, aggression level increased. Sucks, but not just watching a violent scene is immediately a crime. But according to long-term follow-up shows that children often watching violence on TV tends to be aggressive. More fearful as adults. Reason not only imitating but also being a man. Radiation. When seeing bloody scenes of killing repeated over time, people become less emotional. Aggressive, less empathetic, and more accepting of violence. Force as normal. When a teenager witnessed the fight in real life. If accustomed to similar images on screen shape, he may not interfere. Even cheer. The combination of heat degree, alcohol, weapons, social exclusion and violent media creates an environment explosive field. In addition, there are sexual scripts in culture. Those ambiguous expectation model of attractiveness. About saying means no. Say no meaning yes, has led to a form of violent special sweat, sexual abuse. Day to day, rape is clearly defined. Based on no consensus. Majority the cases do not happen in dark alleys with criminals. Strangers among acquaintances, sometimes in a dating context, drinking alcohol. Ambiguity in the love scenario. Sex makes many men justify themselves, prove that they did nothing wrong, while they were actually forced. When we look more broadly, aggression is not a sentence. Predetermined, there are many ways to reduce minimum punishment can be effective in some contexts, but rarely radical too. If not sure, an instant form punishment often only increases resentment, instead in which, reward and reinforce nonviolent behavior. Violence is much more effective. The children are praised and encouraged when resolve conflicts verbally, by cooperation, often gradually reducing aggressive behavior. Angry setting an example of nonviolence is also a public service. Strong children look at adults, at friends, and learn how to behave. When parents, teachers, and famous people choose to reconcile, solve, listen, share instead of judging, hit or insult, they sow stereotypes. New comes with the construction of the community. Have a cold. When we really put ourselves in the position others, aggressive, hard to be easy. Skills training programs. Empathy in schools has shown positive results. Students bully less, more, violence decreased. Another means is to avoid thoughts and self-control. Research shows that people who practice meditation, deep breathing, or management techniques, emotions are less likely to react aggressively when provoked. They learn to observe, suppress anger instead of acting immediately. So, aggression is not destiny, but the ability to be turned on or held back by culture, circumstances, and personal choice. Core. We carry within us all potential. Aggressive and potentially compassionate. Question is society, education, communication will what part to nourish? Chapter 7. Definition. Ants. When a 6-year-old black girl walked into a school previously reserved for children for white people in New Orleans in 1920-1960, the crowd outside was screaming, angry, throwing murderous object. That scene is deeply engraved into my mind. An innocent child must facing hatred just because of skin color. And how can people hate each other so much, so strong? Just based on their belonging about a group. That is the heart of the concept. Prejudice. Prejudice is understood as a hostile or negative attitude toward with a group of people. Just based on their belong to that group. It has 3 components: emotions, stereotypical beliefs, concepts, rigidity, and behavioral tendencies leading to discrimination. A familiar example: belong to, believe that all Jews are greedy or all women are weak. That is the pattern. When feelings of hate intervene into, it becomes prejudice. And when behavior appear, refuse to hire, do not give permission, elections, low pay, it's divided discrimination. 3 closely linked components tight, creating a spiral of hatred. Definition. Racial prejudice is perhaps the most studied form. Most rescued in America. History of slavery, discrimination, legal racism and social segregation. The association has left deep marks. Recent surveys show that many people still keep implicit biases of which they are not conscious. Clear implicit association test. Much people respond faster to skin graphs: black, ugly compared to black skin. Good. Show latent associations still exist even if they consider themselves not distinguish. Gender stereotypes are also common. No less. Women are often associated with image, soft photo, care. While men, gender is associated with strength, reason, and connection. As a result, women have fewer opportunities for advancement and are paid less. Low wages, excluded from musical professions. He, at the same time, was pressured by prejudice against men, forcing them to be strong, don't be weak, don't show off feeling. Both sexes are victims of template. There is also prejudice against other minorities, homosexuals, transgender, fat, adult-year-old. Religious minorities, regardless of any difference, can become an excuse to label. Distinguishing the origin of diversity bias partly comes from socio-economic competition. When this group see the other group fighting over resources, work, they easily give rise to enemies. The other part comes from the psychological mechanism, the human people who boost their ego by comparison in group, outgroup, and them. Seeing one's own group as superior make us put down other groups. Theory deprivation of relative explanation. Are not need absolute poverty, just feel I was treated unfairly compared to the group otherwise, we are ready to resent. Candidate's classic experience clearly demonstrates. Robert Cave Summer Camp by Musa Fair. Presently, he divided the children into two groups. At a summer camp for sports competition with the prize. After just a few days, two group-born enemies, violent prejudice force, call each other by bad nicknames, rob, break, throw stones. All because of a random split. And when he creates common goals, for example, pushing a broken truck together, attitude hostility decreased, cooperation arose. Test Jen Elliott's other experience with students elementary school is equally haunting. She shared class by eye color, today's eyes are green more, smarter, brown eyes inferior. Within hours, the blue-eyed baby began to arrogant contempt. Young brown eyes should be self-conscious, study less. The next day, when the shoulder reversal, repetition, only a simple affirmation from the teacher enough to create discrimination and inferiority complex. Definition knowledge is not inborn but can be learned. Easy to sow and maintain. And once it has formed, it tends to reinforce itself. One of the mechanisms that makes prejudice durability is the pattern. When we have assigned a common characteristic to a group, we easily overlook diversity and complexity in that group. The pattern is like a cognitive shortcut, quick and convenient but full of errors. It makes us see a person individual as representative of the collective. One black youth who commit crimes can be seen as evidence that black people are dangerous while millions of black people other honest living was erased from the picture painting. Along with that is confirmation bias. Admitted when believing that a group is lazy we pay special attention to those appropriate cases, but ignore the others. Hard-working. My memory too distorted. We easily remember positive information. Prejudice rather than negative information. In that way, prejudice perpetuates itself through time. Even if the customer evidence go against, there is also a natural in-group. We tend to favor the group. I appreciate the team members and strict with outgroups. This no real reason needed, just analysis. Random division is enough. In a series experiment, children were divided into groups blue and red group by chance. Right then they start to like their group more, despise the other group. Even though there is no real difference, the impact of the definition attitudes are not just limited to profound influence on behavior. Discrimination treatment in education, salary, opportunity. Education leaves lasting consequences. But what's scarier is the prophecy effect. Self-completed. When a group is continuous, if they are treated badly, they will hardly succeed. And that failure is what the analyst blames. Used as evidence that prejudice correct. For example, if the teacher believes that the poor children are not smart, they can go low attention, low expectations, and fruit. Poor students actually do worse academically. And stereotypes are confirmed. In reality, not because the child is poor but because of expectations. The low weight has held them back, and there is now stereotype threat. When people know that their group is assigned a negative stereotypes, that pressure can make real performance loss. Experiment foreseen. When women are reminded that women are often worse at math than men, they do well on tests. Math is much worse than when not being affected. Remind. Just one hint is enough to change things. Temporary truth. This not only harmful to individuals but also reinforce false social beliefs. All these mechanisms keep prejudice alive. At a stage like a loop. It doesn't need proof, it creates its own evidence. For yourself, and the danger is many biases operate at an unconscious level. The prejudiced person doesn't even recognize go out. They can claim I am not discriminating. Separate but in small decisions, they are still unconsciously biased. However, no, there is no way to reduce prejudice. The classical theory is the contact hypothesis, simple idea: the contact between the groups can reduce prejudice, but not every contact is effective. The necessary conditions include status equal, common goal, cooperation instead because of competition, and the support of the law or institution. When enough exposure can be drastic change in attitude. Experiment Robert Cave summer camp shows clearly after only when creating big goals that two young people must cooperate, rivalry just disappeared. The common goal has been reset. Relationship from enemies to teammates in the U.S. military. Conscription policy: white and black soldiers live and eat. War unit fighting also reduces prejudice. Because they share equal duties and status each other. Field studies reinforce adding strength to the contact hypothesis in schools. Applying the program general curriculum: white and skinned children black work in groups, play sports together, prejudice is significantly reduced. In the Army America, where black and white soldiers fought together, fight, eat, sleep together. Surveys show that prejudice is decreasing. Stronger than civilians, obviously, legitimate work for common goals under conditions equality, supported by institutions, is the key to breaking stereotypes. Although, however, mere contact is sometimes not enough. If contact takes place in a context inequality or competition, it can increase prejudice. For example, when two color groups same race studying in the same school but different group considered inferior, discrimination can go deeper. So, normal condition status is the core. In addition to contact, there are other approaches. Education can help people realize the absurdity of prejudice when students understand the mechanism stereotypes, about confirmation bias. Surname less unconscious traps media. The masses also play a big role. Image diverse, positive images of minority groups. Numbers can challenge old stereotypes. Commercial artwork provide a more humane perspective to help society gradually change. Prejudice is too ingrained are not usually easily dissolved by reason alone. People don't usually change just because proven wrong. Change comes from direct experience, from working together, share goals or words, personal moments that go beyond template. A white person can do not believe in equality, race until his black teammates saved his life. On the battlefield. A man gender stereotypes can change when witnessing her daughter shine in scientific field, prejudice. Despite the danger is also part of human psychology. People, the need to classify, simplify world and ego enhancement through comparison. Compare but understanding its mechanism, we can be alert and resist. Mandarin. The important thing is to build social norms. In which discrimination is considered non-existent, acceptable when society agrees that everyone is equal. Power of the norm will push the individual out of spiral of prejudice. Finally, what is needed? Remember that prejudice is not only harmful to victims, individuals, but also impoverish society. It prevents us from seeing and exploiting the potential of marginalized people. It causes division, erodes cooperation, and breeds harboring hatred. If you want a community strong, creative, humane, we must constantly ask the question, is there a purpose? What is covering my eyes and what will I do to break it? Chapter 8. Love and connection. If you ask me what do people crave most? Answer: words are not just food, drink or security has a deeper need than attachment. Social connection. We are social creatures, survive through relationships with people other. When those relationships are lacking, absent, people easily fall into loneliness, depression, collapse, even illness. Research has shows loneliness and social isolation not only causes mental pain but also affects physical health, increased risk of heart disease, depression, and withdrawal. Short life. In contrast, the connection with friends, family and lovers give meaning, motivation and happiness. So, to understand people, we must understand why we like, love and be attached. First question, why do we like some people and not like someone else? One strong factor is closeness. People who are close to us physically normal space, become friends, opposite work or lover. Not because they are special difference, because of the opportunity to come into contact makes it easier for us. Familiar, easy to develop feelings. Experiment popular in a college dormitory shows students living close together in the hallway often become friends than those who are far away. Simply because of meeting each other regularly. In short, social smile, all accumulated into success. Familiar that leads us to a concept. Important concept, single exposure effect. Pure. Just meet a person many times, we tend to like them more. Even when no deep communication, familiarity brings a sense of security and comfort. In advertising. Repeat image 1. The brand also aims to take advantage of the mechanism this, but closeness is not enough. The similarity is the strong factor in friendship and love. We often make friends with people who share similar values, beliefs, interests, or lifestyles. There is a popular saying, birds of a feather flock together. Code search. Code empirical data support that. Lasting couples often share more in common than distinctive. Even though we are sometimes attracted by novelty, but to maintain the relationship in the long run, similarity plays a key role. However, paradox still exists. Pair when the addition can be attractive. One person extroverts can feel comfortable outside, an introvert a decisive person can get along with easygoing people fast. However, studies show that similarities have a more stabilizing influence compared to supplements. Differences can be interesting at first, but in the long run it can easily lead to conflict. Other factors that cannot be ignored is physical attractiveness. Right from the start, at first glance, appearance plays a role. Strong in our desire to contact, to do whether you are in love or not, interesting is a generally agreed upon standard of beauty. Widely, across cultures, symmetrical face, healthy features, bright skin, harmonious body proportions. The evolutionists explain that we are attracted to led by health-related signs and fertility. But appearance not only instinct, society also reinforces beauty advantage. Attractive person often assigned additional qualities: positive, intelligent, kind, and capable. Force just for looks. This is the halo effect. Light in many experiments. Same essay, but if attached with a photo beauty, it is scored higher. Appearance becomes an open passport door of opportunity. However, the attraction not completely fixed. When we know each other long-term, personality and behavior can make someone becomes attractive or unattractive. Go in my eyes, a person with appearance normal but kind, humorous, sincerity will become more and more beautiful. Perception of friends and lovers. Reverse again, a beautiful but arrogant and selfish person century will soon lose its appeal. From like falling in love is a big leap. Important psychologists distinguish two types: main, passionate love and committed love. Bundle. Passionate love comes with lust, highness, obsession, near craving, physical and mental closeness. It often flares up fast, burning, but also fades easily. While that, love is based on intimacy, confidentiality, commitment and lasting engagement. Rank usually appears after the initial infatuation. Head down. Some scholars describe love by the triangle model of Speer. The three ingredients are passion, intimacy, and commitment. When combined differently, they create many forms of love: friendship, passionate love, empty marriage, and the ideal is perfect love. Have all three researchers also found understand more deeply why we fall in love? The answer lies in the combination of psychological and biological factors. When in love, the set secrete dopamine and estrogen to create sensation, excitement, engagement, and deep joy. Brain scans show that when people looking at a picture of your lover, the brain region involved to the shining reward, like reaction to delicious food or drugs. This explains why love can addictive. I crave presence of the other as if craving a stimulant prefer. But love is not just chemistry. Quality, it also reflects the strategy of progress. Chemistry, couple bonding, child rearing help humans survive. Children, it takes many years for humans to mature. And the cooperation of both parents is beneficial. Survival, so the brain is wired programmed to promote long-term engagement. Another important factor in the situation love is justice. Research shows a happy relationship is often where both two feel contribute and receive balance. Worthy when one feels like giving more than you get back or vice versa. Stressed, straight and dissatisfied appear. Justice, not necessarily an exact have but the feeling that each person's contribution the side that is respected and balanced according to reasonable way. However, love does not avoid conflict. The question is the pair's how do couples resolve conflicts. Research shows that couples who communicate well, open, non-contemptuous, non-violent and knowing how to listen is more likely to maintain happiness. Conversely, if there is a conflict treated with contempt, defensiveness, attack or cold silence, relationship often quickly fall apart. Gottman, Home Marital Studies. It is even possible to predict divorce with a degree of certainty. Highly accurate just by observation. How couples argue beyond love. Romance and friendship are also forms of love. Strong bond. Friends provide support, mental support, helping us face difficulties. Towels and share joy like love. Friendship is built on closeness, close, similar and trustworthy. No friends, people easily fall into loneliness. One, a state considered toxic to both health, mental and physical. Lonely is a testament to the importance of social connection. The isolated people often experience anxiety, depression and fatigue. Reduced immune system. They are also at risk of death. Higher early mortality, equivalent to those risks such as smoking or obesity. Reverse again, people with strong social networks are often happier and live longer. The connection is not just an emotional need, also a biological need. One aspect. Another interesting thing is the rejection. When rejected feelings or turned away by friends, people experience real pain. Region, the brain that processes physical pain is also stimulated. Active when we experience social pain. This explains why you break up or lose friends. Can be painful, no less traumatic. Physical, and this pain can lead to serious consequences, aggressive behavior, self-destructive, even criminal. However, the engagement is not always easy to achieve. In the modern world, many people fall lonely even though living in a crowded social networks instead of increasing connections, sometimes create illusions. Hundreds of friends, online friends but lack relationships. Close, deep relationship surveys foresee more young people feel lonely ever. Although more virtual communication, real connection requires presence, listening and trust. Things difficult to replace with a screen. Study also showed that social support does not only help us face difficulties but also make increase physical health. Surgical patients faster recovery with someone next to. Old people have close friends less likely to develop dementia. Crisis, just need someone to hold my hand. Listening makes a big difference. The notable factor in bonding is the self-disclosure. When we share our thoughts and feelings, emotions, fears, and secret dreams, we create out intimacy. Deep relationships often develop from conversations, things beyond the surface. Self-control. Exposure increases trust and retrust encourage more sharing. This is a circle of intimate nurturing. Although, however, revealing too much too quickly can counterproductive. Balance and progress. Gradual development is necessary. Some research shows that satisfaction levels in marriage and friendship depends much on self-disclosure. The only couples maintain emotional sharing. Both fun. Sadness tends to stick around. On the contrary, when communication is narrowed down to practical matters, intimacy fades, relationship is fragile, the bond is also maintained by commitment. No oranges in the end, passionate love fades easily. Orange creates a sense of security, stability, and helping couples get through difficult times. Towel. But commitment is not just words. Promise, it needs to be reinforced by action, support, give way to loyalty. Real out, love and connection are always balance between ego and self. Too much self-focus can be destructive. Ruin relationships. Too much personal sacrifice. Body also leads to dissatisfaction. Relationship healthy is when both feel respected, the needs of both are respected. Listen. A major risk of relationship is social comparison and jealousy. When look at other couples or pictures sparkling on the internet, many people feel dissatisfied with their own relationship. Jealousy can also destroy trust, even lead to violence. The only way to fight back is to build trust, communication, be direct and focus on values, relationship specific. Instead of comparing with an ideal that is out of reach, in fact, it should also be mentioned that it is not all connections are positive. There are relationships toxic system where one person is controlling, violent to harm or hurt another person. Research shows that many victims remain at home. Back in abusive relationships because of dependency, emotional, economic, or social. Understanding bonding mechanisms that help us recognize and support help get out of such situations. Meanwhile, healthy relationships brings extraordinary power. The person is bear the pressure of work. If you have a partner listening, will be less stressful. Far away students, if you have close friends at home, you will study better. The elderly have grandchildren. Visits often live longer. Social support association is the shield that protects people from illness, crisis and loneliness. Miss the opposite can be destructive. It doesn't just a temporary feeling of sadness. Prolonged psychological state causes children to people become suspicious, distrustful others and inadvertently isolate yourself. Moreover, this vortex makes loneliness worse. Deeper, leading to depression and breakdown health. All of this shows that love and commitment are not luxuries, products that are basic human needs. Just like we need air and water, we also need connection to live well. The most modern studies agree humans are designed to bond. And it is the commitment that makes the success. Human evolution. When we understand mechanism of proximity, similarity, attraction, guidance, love, friendship, justice, social commitment and support. We not only understand yourself better and also be able to build more lasting relationships, and in an increasingly noisy world, dispersed, more important than ever all is to know how to appreciate, nurture and protect real bonds. Chapter 9. Social Psychology as a Science. Learn. If you have ever argued with a friend on why people act like they do, you've probably heard confident affirmations like "who also only think for themselves," or "women are more emotional than men," or "if you want to know someone, just look at their friends." Though such a statement seems reasonable but is rarely true. When verified by physical evidence tests, that is the difference between intuition and social psychology. Heart sociology as a science built on the belief that wanting to understand human behavior we can't just based on philosophy and personal experience or intuition, that must be based on observation, systematic, controlled experiments and data. Whether only in that way can we distinguish which assumption is wrong, which is true. Real history shows many beliefs popular has been disproved by science. Nothing limited. Many people used to think that punishment, severe punishment, will deter children from misbehaving. Naughty, but research shows that punishment over punishment often leads to resistance, more lying and aggressive, or opinion that innate instincts determine everything. Chief. While experiments demonstrate that the environment, social environments can powerfully shape behavior to achieve scientificity. Heart social theory must follow the method science. This means starting from clear hypothesis, experimental design, controlled, measured behavior, objective and willing to refute theories if the data goes backwards. What is important is science does not seek absolute certainty. To find probabilistic evidence. Let me say it is very possible, not absolutely certain. Some people complain that social psychology study only the obvious, but the so-called obvious is often just right after the event has occurred. This is known effect. For example, after reading about a riot, we can talk about that it's inevitable, because people are too repressed. Long. But no one predicted that before. Exactly when the riots will break out. Scientific research helps us to distinguish between the real, grounded and the just as post-event inference. Psychologists' society often faces a challenge: knowledge, How to study human behavior, people in complex contexts, but still keep the experiment controlled to draw out a reliable conclusion is given laboratory situation, creating simplified but original version nature. For example, to study the effects social norms, Solomon A.S. design experiment comparing the length of lines, an artificial situation but enough to give C the power of compliance. One way other is observation in natural environment but using semi-controlled method control, for example, research on helping behavior in large and small cities by staging create a situation where a stranger drops something, count the percentage of people who help pick up studies. This gives us a realistic, complementary view. For lab testing. Core points is social science not always also perfect, but it is much better than that based on belief or anecdote. It allows us to test, iterate, and build knowledge gradually. Thus, psychology social learning becomes a powerful tool to understand and improve the human world. An important feature of psychological science, social psychology, is based on experimental testing. Control to isolate the cause. Result. In life we often see two things: events happen together and jump to conclusions. One thing causes another. For example, people found that children watch a lot of violent television, then more aggressive, and immediately assumed that violent television causes aggression. But also the opposite possibility. The children were aggressive, people like to watch violent shows. Force only carefully designed experiments. Only the kidneys can help us distinguish. In experiment, researcher actively change one variable and keep everything else the same as similar as possible. If the children watch violent movies are actually more aggressive than group watch a light movie, we have proof that it was the violence in the film that contributed the part that makes the difference. Method. This is not perfect, but it is stronger much more than discrete observations. Socks. However, social experiments have limits. For ethical reasons. We cannot put people in love. Extreme or truly dangerous situations. Because therefore, many studies have to use simplified artificial situation. This raises the question of whether the results in laboratory reflects reality in real life. Scientists solve by repeating the study in multiple different contexts, both in the room, just off the scene. To strengthen the character in general, another challenge is measure attitudes and emotions. Things that cannot be directly observed. To do that, social psychologists use questionnaires, scales, behavioral responses. 6. Even measure physiological activity or brain imaging. The goal is to get data, objective data, instead of relying on impressions, subjective. Scientific research also requires ask for objectivity and transparency. The scientists must publish their methods, data, and allow others to repeat it. Only when the results are reproduced many times, we believe in the correctness. This is why science progresses slowly, spacious but sturdy, unlike the other's temporary statement. Some people also give that social psychology how to predict accurately perceive people when they are complex and constantly changing. But science not intended to predict specific individuals but to find common trends. Rules. Law of probability. Unpredictable examples. Would you help a stranger next time, but it can be predicted that when there are multiple witnesses. Probability helps the sharp decrease, that is the bystander effect proven through a series of study. Social psychology must also facing criticisms about its applicability. Use. Someone asked to research some games. What good is petty gossip in the classroom to society? Festival. But in fact many discoveries have been made. Big impact. Understanding Standard Effects Inc. helps design health campaigns more efficient. Public research on stereotypes and stereotype threat help improve education. Understanding Diffusion Responsibility for helping to build the program. Emergency response training. From those small details social sciences open up to take a broad view of big issues. A typical example is the study about the MRAM experiment. Initially, many people believe that only dictators or tyrants, only violent people torture others. But MRAM proved normal people when pressure from authority can also cause pain to others. Detect this not only changes science but also helps society better understand the mechanism of to collective crime. From the Holocaust to abuses in the military today, social psychology, so it is both science and technology. Basic learning, as well as a practical tool, it helps us explain familiar phenomena every day, like why we laugh when others laugh, why the crowd panic, while providing knowledge to solve serious problems such as racism, violence and inequality. Social work. A key principle in science is systematic skepticism. Social psychologists do not accept something just because it seems reasonable. They always ask questions with evidence. How is that evidence collected? Maybe repeat. It is that doubt helps science avoid falling into the trap of obvious facts or just that bias or mistaken intuition. Although, however, social sciences are not immune. Free from limitations and errors. Sometimes the test poorly designed or tested unrepeatable results. Regeneration movement established over the past few decades has highlighted this problem. Many famous studies not reproduced. Forcing the scientific community must improve methods, increase intelligence, data transparency and emphasis on transparency including null results. It is this self-regulation that is powerful. Of science. It has the ability to self-criticize and correct errors. Another difference of social psychology is that it is always associated with ethical issues. Behavioral research. People cannot disregard interests of the participant. Experiments causing stress like Milgram's or Stanford's prison has created a fierce controversy leading to the development of ethical standards study. Participants must be information, have the right to withdraw and be protected. Protect from long-term damage. Nowadays, all research must go through the ethics committee. To ensure humane standards. Some critics say this makes science learn to lose power, cannot discover the darkest sides of humanity. But that is the price necessary to protect human dignity, and even though there are limits, researchers are still finding ways to brighten created to study sensitive phenomena feel without violating ethics, for example by computer simulations, anonymous surveys or real data analysis. Psychological science. Social theory also faces skepticism from the public. Many people still think that it's just enjoyment, but it's when we test and enjoy, we just discovered paradoxes appear. For example, it is believed that the heavier the punishment, the worse the crime. The more crime is reduced. But the data shows the death penalty does not reduce the rate of murder or the notion that competition promote creativity, while many research demonstrates new partnerships long-lasting effect. What is important is social sciences are not just about satisfying curiosity but also has deep practical implications from public policy design, improve the education system to the point of resolve international conflicts. Social psychology provides insights. Know the basics of how people think, feel and act in relation to other people. In conclusion, when we call psychology sociology is a science that emphasizes strongly that it is evidence-based, rigorous testing and verification, not intuition or subjective belief. Mandarin. It may not be perfect, sometimes errors, but it has the ability to correct itself, self-reinforcing and gradually get closer to the truth. In a world full of conflicting views, contrarian, conspiracy theories and misinformation biased, that scientific approach becomes more precious than ever. Social Psychology Society reminds us that to understand the human people, we need more than words of affirmation. Determined, we need to observe and try. Experience and evidence. Only then will we overcome the illusion of intuition and towards the truth about the social nature of human. Thank you for joining us. Me on this long journey. A life journey through each psychological wave society. Where things seem obvious but it turns out to be paradoxical. Where a polite smile can open up a whole world. Network connection. And also where the collective silence can turn into tragedy. If you have patiently listened to the last page, I believe the book this has left in you not only information believe but also a streak of doubt. Stop urges you to look at everyday life with different eyes, sharper, more alert and also more humane. I hope that after when you close, please share your feelings. My own about this book. Are not need empty praise or criticism. What counts is your true thoughts. What do you find suggestive, what makes you tick? You disagree or what you want, dig deeper, your reflection that makes this conversation complete whole, and because reading is a dialogue never ending, I would like to invite you, suggest me, which book do you want heard next? Could be in effect the classic you've been avoiding because heavy fear, a newly published book controversial, or an ideal text small but contains a lot of weight. Imagine, let me know. Leave us alone, let's go on another adventure, an adventure in words, but touching on life's biggest questions living. Thank you. See you in A.